A rainy night. A lonely road outside Denver. Headlights slice through the storm as a pickup truck slows to a stop. Ethan Cross leans forward, squinting through the downpour. Flashing red and blue lights flicker ahead. Police lights, but something feels wrong. He pulls over, grabs a flashlight, and steps into the rain. The scene hits him like a punch to the chest. A patrol car is overturned at the edge of the road, smoke hissing from the hood. Rainwater mixes with gasoline, running in dark streams along the pavement. And there, beside the wreck, lies a woman in uniform, motionless, drenched, her face pale under the flashing lights. Ethan rushes toward her. She's young, maybe late 20s, brown skin shining with rain and blood. Her badge glints weakly in his flashlight. He kneels beside her. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her lips move. The voice that comes out is barely a whisper. "Back up, they're not coming." Ethan's instincts kick in. He shrugs off his jacket, presses it against the wound in her side, and tries to keep her awake. "Stay with me. I've seen worse. You're not dying tonight." His tone is steady, calm, the kind that makes people believe him. An hour later, she's in a hospital bed with a perfect surgical stitch running across her abdomen. The police captain stands beside her, staring at the precision of the wound closure. His hands tremble slightly. "Who the hell did this?" He murmurs. "That's military work." Ethan Cross, 40 years old. Tall, broad shoulders, quiet eyes. A man who wakes every morning at 5:30 in a small house outside town. He lives the kind of life where neighbors wave from a distance, but don't ask questions. In the kitchen, Ethan packs a lunch for his 10-year-old daughter, Maria. She's bright-eyed, with a warm brown complexion and an endless curiosity. "Daddy, why do you have scars on your hands?" she asks. He always smiles and changes the subject. He never tells her the truth. The truth belongs to a different man, a soldier, a combat medic in special forces, a man who saved lives under fire, stitched wounds in the dark, and pulled people back from the edge of death. But that was another life, before the explosion, before the night his wife, Rachel, was killed during what should have been a routine traffic stop. The same cartel he'd encountered overseas was operating right here, in Redwood County. That realization broke him. He left the Army, left everything. Now, he drives a delivery truck, hauls supplies, and keeps to himself. On his wrist, a black rubber bracelet reads in faded letters, "Never leave a fallen." It's past 11 that night when Ethan finishes his last delivery. Rain pounds against the windshield. The forest road ahead is empty and dark. Most people avoid this route after dark, but Ethan doesn't mind the silence until he sees them again, those flashing lights, red and blue, faint through the sheets of rain. A patrol car, overturned. Smoke. Ethan slows down. His gut tells him to call 911 and keep driving. "Not your problem," he reminds himself. "You're not that man anymore." But he stops. He always stops. Ethan grabs his flashlight and steps into the storm. The wreckage looks worse up close. The car flipped twice at least. Broken glass glitters across the wet pavement. Inside, slumped against the steering wheel, a young black officer struggles to breathe. Blood stains her torn vest. Her name tag reads, Officer Dana Lee. Ethan shines the light over her. She's losing blood fast. He pulls out his phone, no signal. The forest blocks everything. Dana's hand suddenly grips his wrist, strong despite her fading strength. "If you run, they'll find you too," she rasps. "They're watching." He looks at her, really looks. The fear, the pain, the fight still in her eyes. And for a split second, he sees his wife. Not the same face, but the same courage, the same desperation. Ethan takes a breath. "Then I guess we both fight." He sprints to the back of his truck. Beneath a tarp lies an old medical kit, military grade. He hasn't opened it in years. But tonight, his hands move without hesitation. He returns to the wreck and kneels beside Dana. Her breathing is shallow, lips trembling. "Hey," he says, his voice steady. "What's your name?" "Dana." "Okay, Dana. I'm Ethan. I'm going to get you out, but you need to stay awake. Talk to me. Why'd you become a cop?" Her lips curl faintly. "Wanted to make a difference." "Good reason," he says, slicing through her seat belt with his knife. The blade glints under the lightning, familiar in his hand. The smell of gasoline thickens. The car could explode any moment. Still, Ethan works fast packing gauze into the wound, pressing, clamping, sealing. Dana screams but doesn't resist. "Talk to me, Dana," he says through the rain. "Who did this?" "Cartel," she whispers. "Followed a lead. They ran me off the road. Thought I was dead." Ethan's jaw tightens. The same name again. The same evil. "How many?" "2 cars. Maybe 6 men. Then we'll make them regret it." He tightens the field dressing, and the bleeding finally slows. But they're not safe. The car hisses. Fuel leaks down the slope. "Can you move?" he asks. "I don't know. You're going to have to try. On 3. 1, 2. He lifts her before she can finish the count. She's too light. The adrenaline helps him carry her 20, 30, 50 feet from the wreck before. Boom. The patrol car erupts behind them, a blazing fireball lighting up the forest. Ethan throws himself over Dana, shielding her as shrapnel rains down. Heat washes across their backs. For a moment, there's nothing but fire and noise. Then silence. Rain falls again, hissing against the flames. Dana coughs, staring up at him. "You're insane." Ethan almost smiles. "I get that a lot." He checks her pulse. The wound's holding, but she's fading. "We need to get you to the road," he says. "Ambulance won't find us here." "I can't walk." "Then I'll carry you." He hoists her across his shoulders in a fireman's carry. Half a mile uphill in the rain, with a dying woman on his back. It's not the hardest thing he's done, but it's close. Each step is agony, each breath heavy. Dana groans but doesn't complain. "Tell me about your daughter," she murmurs. Ethan glances down, surprised. "What, your jacket?" "Picture in the pocket. Maria," he almost laughs. "You're sharp, even half dead." "She's 10, right?" "Yeah, smart to smart. Keeps asking why I won't teach her to stitch." "Why won't you?" "Because I don't ever want her to need that skill." Dana's voice weakens. "Your wife, was she a cop?" Ethan hesitates, then nods. "Yeah, died 5 years ago. Same kind of setup. Cartel ambush. I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just stay alive. That's all I ask." By the time they reach the road, Ethan's soaked and exhausted. He lays her down gently on the wet asphalt and waves at a passing truck. The driver, a gray-haired black man, takes one look at the scene and calls 911. 15 minutes later, sirens cut through the storm. Paramedics rush in, flashlights flashing, voices overlapping. They lift Dana onto a stretcher and cut open her uniform. One of them, a seasoned EMT named Santos, freezes when he sees the field dressing. "Who did this?" he murmurs. "That's military precision. Whoever patched her up saved her life." A young officer turns to Ethan. "What's your name, sir?" "Ethan Cross. You a doctor?" He shakes his head. "Just a guy who couldn't keep driving." The police captain arrives, tall, dark-skinned, silver-haired, commanding presence. He surveys the burning wreck, the rain, the survivor. Then his eyes find Ethan. "You carried her half a mile through the forest. She was dying. Didn't have time to think about evidence." The captain studies him, recognizing something in his calm, battle-ready stance. "Military?" Ethan's silence is his answer. "Name?" the captain asks. "Ethan Cross." He nods slowly. "Well, Mr. Cross, you saved one of ours tonight." Ethan doesn't reply. He just glances toward the ambulance. Dana's conscious again, her eyes meeting his. On her wrist, faintly visible, is his black bracelet, "Never leave a fallen." Ethan nods once, rain dripping down his face. Then he turns, climbs into his truck, and drives away into the night. 3 days later, Officer Dana Lee opens her eyes to white walls and the soft beeping of machines. Her head throbs. Pain medicine dulls the edges, but every breath still hurts. She's alive, that much she knows. Her hands instinctively reach toward her wrist. Something is there, a black rubber bracelet with faded words carved into it. "Never leave a fallen." A man sits beside her bed, calm but watchful. His uniform is crisp, his face lined with years of command. Captain Raymond Holt, 60 years old, eyes like steel. "Welcome back, Officer Lee," he says quietly. "How are you feeling?" Dana winces as she tries to sit up. "Like I got hit by a truck," she groans. He gives a faint smile. "That's about right." Then his tone hardens. Forget the case for a moment. Tell me about the man who pulled you out. Dana closes her eyes, replaying the chaos, the rain, the voice that kept her alive. Tall, maybe 6'2". Black man, 40s, calm to calm, like he'd done it 1,000 times. When I thought I was dying, he told me I wasn't, said he'd seen worse. She looks down at the bracelet and traces the carved letters. Whoever he was, Captain, he knew exactly what he was doing. The wound stitching, the field dressing, it was perfect. Military-grade trauma care. He carried me half a mile through the rain. You don't learn that in first aid training. Captain Holt pulls a tablet from his coat pocket and turns it toward her. Is this him? The photo shows a serious black man with strong features, a faint scar on his temple. Ethan Cross. Dana stares for a moment, then nods. Yes, that's him. Who is he? That's what we're trying to figure out, Holt replies. By afternoon, the conference room at Redwood County PD is filled with quiet tension. Detective Alicia Torres, mid-30s, sharp eyes and natural curls tied back, stands beside a monitor. We ran the truck's registration, she begins. Name's Ethan Cross, lives outside town. No criminal record. Works as a delivery driver. But when I ran a background check, things got interesting. She taps the screen. Military service record appears, most of it blacked out by heavy redactions. Ethan Cross, Special Forces Combat Medic, 7 deployments. Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. Honorably discharged 5 years ago after his wife, Officer Rachel Cross, was killed during a drug interdiction gone wrong. Captain Holt leans forward, eyes narrowing. The suspects, never caught, Torres says. Intel linked the operation to the same cartel we've been tracking here in Redwood County. A long silence fills the room. He's been hunting them, Holt mutters. Or avoiding them, Torres counters. If he wanted revenge, he'd have taken it years ago. Maybe he's trying to stay invisible. Holt rubs his temples. Invisible men don't run into burning cars. The next morning, the unmarked sedan rolls to a stop in front of Ethan's small house at the edge of town. The morning sun cuts through the fog. Inside, Ethan stands at the stove, flipping pancakes, while Maria sits at the table doing homework. She hums softly to herself, a pencil tucked behind her ear. It's an ordinary morning until the doorbell rings. Ethan glances outside and spots the sedan. 2 figures inside. Cops. He doesn't panic. He just exhales slowly. Honey, he says, turning to Maria, I need you to finish your homework in your room for a bit. Okay. Am I in trouble? She asks, wide-eyed. No, I am a little, but it's okay, he says with a soft smile. Go on. She gives him a long look, then walks off. Ethan opens the door. Detective Torres stands there, badge visible. Beside her is Detective Kim, a calm Korean-American man with glasses and a polite nod. Mr. Cross? Torres asks. That's me. I'm Detective Torres. This is Detective Kim. We'd like to ask a few questions about the incident 3 nights ago. I already gave a statement, Ethan says evenly. We have some follow-up questions, she replies. May we come in? He hesitates, then steps aside. Sure. They sit in the living room. The space is modest, clean, but simple. On the wall hangs a shadow box filled with old medals. Bronze, silver, purple. Torres's eyes land on it. That's quite a collection, she says. Old life, Ethan replies quietly. Detective Kim flips open his notebook. Mr. Cross, we reviewed your military record. You were a Special Forces combat medic, expert in trauma care. That's not a question, Ethan says. Kim pushes on. Why didn't you tell us that when we asked how you saved Officer Lee? You asked if I was a doctor, Ethan answers calmly. I said no. You asked if I was a medic. I said I used to be. I answered honestly. Torres studies him. You were being evasive. I was being private. There's a difference. The air in the room thickens with quiet tension. Then the front door opens again. Captain Holt steps inside, uninvited. He must have been waiting outside, letting his detectives soften the ground. Mr. Cross, he says, voice low but steady, we need to talk. Ethan doesn't move. About what? About why a decorated Special Forces medic is driving a delivery truck in the middle of nowhere. Ethan crosses his arms. Is that illegal? No, Holt admits, but it's interesting. Especially since that same medic just saved a police officer investigating the same cartel that killed his wife 5 years ago. The silence after that sentence feels heavy. Ethan's jaw tightens slightly, but his expression doesn't change. I don't know what you're implying, he says. Holt takes a slow step forward. Not implying, just connecting dots. Your wife, Rachel Cross, was killed by cartel members. The case went cold. You left the military right after. Now, you just happened to save an officer chasing that same cartel. Coincidence? Ethan meets his eyes. I don't believe in coincidences either. Then help us, Holt says simply. With what? Officer Lee is alive because of you, but she's still in danger. The cartel knows she survived. They'll come for her again. Ethan's tone hardens. Then protect her. That's your job. We're trying, Holt replies, his frustration showing. But these people aren't street thugs. They're military trained, well-armed, and they know our tactics. We need someone who thinks like they do. Ethan shakes his head immediately. No, we're not asking you to fight, Torres says gently. We need a tactical consultant. Someone who understands combat medicine, ambushes, counterinsurgency. You could save more lives, Ethan. I said no. Why? Holt asks. Ethan gestures toward the hallway where Maria disappeared. Because I have a daughter who needs a father, not a folded flag. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Torres's voice softens. Mr. Cross, if we don't stop them, more officers will die. More children will grow up without parents just like your daughter did. That one lands. Ethan looks away. His gaze falls on the medals on the wall. The silver star, the bronze, the purple heart, all pieces of a man he thought he buried. He sees Dana Lee's face again, blood in the rain. He hears her voice asking about his wife, and he thinks about Maria. What would she want him to do? The answer comes quietly. She'd want him to make sure no other kid loses their parent. The way she did. He takes a long breath. Fine, I'll consult. Nothing more. I don't go into the field. I don't carry a weapon. I analyze, I advise, I teach your people how to stay alive. That's it. Captain Holt extends his hand. Deal. Ethan hesitates, then shakes it. Torres smiles faintly. When can you start? Tomorrow, Ethan says. But we do this my way. I train your officers in combat medicine, review your tactical plans, and if I say something's too dangerous, you listen. Agreed, Holt says. As they leave, Holt stops at the door and turns back. One more thing, he says, pulling a small box from his pocket. Officer Lee asked me to give you this. Ethan opens it. Inside is his black bracelet, cleaned, polished, and a note written in shaky handwriting. Never leave a fallen. Thank you for not leaving me. Dana L. Ethan stares at it for a long time. Then, with quiet reverence, he slips the bracelet back onto his wrist where it belongs. 2 weeks later, the echo of boots and voices fills the police training room. Folding chairs are lined up in rows. 15 officers sit waiting, mostly young faces, black, brown, Latino people who signed up to make a difference, but have never been tested by real chaos. At the front stands Captain Holt, his presence commanding as always. Listen up, he says. Today's instructor isn't from any academy. He's a man who's seen combat, who's kept people alive in situations you can't imagine. He's here because he's one of the best there is. This is Ethan Cross, former Special Forces combat medic. Treat every word like your life depends on it, because it might. Ethan steps forward, dressed simply in jeans and a gray shirt. No rank, no uniform, no ego. Just calm authority. He surveys the room. The officers sit up straighter. The first 60 seconds in a crisis decide whether you live or die, he says quietly. That's not a theory. That's math. In those 60 seconds, panic kills more people than bullets. I'm here to make sure you don't freeze when it matters most. He places a dummy on the table. Today, we start with the basic tourniquets, pressure points, wound packing. For the next 3 hours, the room becomes a whirlwind of focused energy. Ethan moves from officer to officer, correcting their technique, explaining why every second matters. He's patient but precise. Tighter, he tells one officer. You're not stopping circulation, you're buying time. Dana Lee sits in the front row, still healing, her movements slow but determined. The scar on her abdomen is a reminder of what happens when things go wrong. She listens intently, taking notes. During a break, she walks over. "You're good at this," she says, smiling faintly. Ethan shrugs. "Spent years teaching soldiers how not to die." "Well," she says softly, "you did that for me, too." He doesn't reply right away. "How's recovery?" "Slow," she admits, "but steady. Captain told me about your wife." He looks at her, eyes distant. "He talks too much." "I'm sorry," she says. "You couldn't have known." She studies him. "Is that why you saved me?" "Because I reminded you of her." Ethan takes a moment before answering. "I saved you because it was right. But yeah, maybe I saw her in you. Same courage, same uniform." Dana nods, emotion tightening her throat. "We're closing in on the cartel, raiding one of their warehouses in 3 days. Captain wants you there as tactical consultant." Ethan shakes his head. "I don't go into the field. Just observe," she says. "Your judgment could save lives." He glances around the training room. These officers are brave, but inexperienced. Good hearts, no field scars. He sighs. "Fine, but I stay in the command vehicle." Deal. 3 days later, dawn breaks over Redwood County. The air is sharp, filled with tension. 20 officers move in coordinated silence, surrounding a rundown warehouse at the edge of town. Inside the mobile command center, Ethan stands beside Captain Holt, scanning blueprints and camera feeds. Radio chatter crackles in his earpiece. Team 1 in position. Team 2 ready. Team 3 holding on the west exit. Ethan studies the layout. "That back exit," he says, pointing to the screen. "It's too quiet. Probably rigged to blow. Keep Team 3 back." Holt frowns. "You sure?" "Yeah, that's what I'd do if I wanted to trap you." "Copy that," Holt says into the radio. "Team 3, hold your position. Do not approach the rear door." Inside the warehouse, the raid begins. Flashbangs explode, smoke and shouts fill the air. The suspects panic. Gunfire echoes briefly, then dies out. Team 1 secure, the radio crackles. Multiple suspects down. Leader still inside. Ethan leans forward. He'll run for the back, and he does. Rafael Cortez, the cartel lieutenant, emerges from the shadows, a lean man with slicked back hair, a scar over one eye, and madness in his grin. He bolts toward the back exit, detonator clutched in his hand. "Freeze, police!" shouts one of the officers. Cortez turns, raising the detonator. "Come closer, and we all die." "Captain," Dana's voice cuts in over the radio. "He's got explosives." Pressure switch on the door frame. Ethan's instincts flare. He grabs the mic. "Dana, look carefully. Do you see a wire from the detonator?" "Yes, red wire, leading to the door." "Then don't let him touch that door. Building's wired to blow." "Take the shot." There's a pause. Then Dana's steady voice. "Copy." A single shot rings out. Cortez drops before his finger can twitch. The detonator falls harmlessly to the floor. Target down. The radio crackles. Building secure. Captain Holt exhales, shoulders finally relaxing. "Too damn close." Ethan nods. "It always is." Minutes later, officers escort the suspects outside in cuffs. Dana emerges too, weapon lowered, face streaked with sweat and relief. Her eyes meet Ethan's through the van window. For a moment, there's quiet understanding between them. That night, the station is alive with noise, laughter, relief, exhaustion. Everyone's safe. In the debriefing room, Captain Holt addresses the team. "We took down a major cartel operation today. No casualties, no injuries. That doesn't happen by luck." He pauses, scanning the room. "It happens because we prepared, because one man refused to let us go in blind." All eyes turn toward Ethan, sitting quietly in the back. "Ethan Cross reminded us why we wear this badge," Holt continues. "To protect, to serve, to never leave a fallen." Applause fills the room. Some officers stand and salute him. Ethan shifts uncomfortably, unused to praise. Dana approaches, holding something in her hands, a silver medal on a small plaque. "Ethan," she says softly, "this belongs here, at the station, so everyone remembers what real courage looks like." He shakes his head. "I didn't do this for recognition." "I know," she says, smiling faintly. That's exactly why you deserve it. She pins the medal to the wall of honor, right beside a section dedicated to fallen officers. Ethan stares at it for a long moment, his old life and his new one finally connected. Captain Holt extends his hand again. You saved my officer. Then you saved my team. We owe you everything. Ethan looks around the room, young faces, proud faces, alive faces. You don't owe me anything, he says quietly. Just promise me one thing. What's that? Holt asks. Go home safe to your families. Every single night. Holt nods solemnly. That's a promise. When Ethan steps into the hallway, the officers line up instinctively, forming a corridor of respect. One by one, they nod as he passes. Dana walks beside him, smiling. You changed everything here, she says softly. You know that, right? Ethan glances back at the station, the lights glowing against the night sky, the people inside. Alive and safe. No, he says quietly. I just reminded them what they already knew. He heads toward his truck. For the first time in years, his heart feels lighter. Purpose has found him again, whether he wanted it or not. As he drives home, rain begins to fall, gentle this time, almost peaceful. The road stretches ahead, dark but open. He thinks about Maria waiting at home, probably asleep with a book in her hands. For years, he thought he'd left the battlefield behind. But tonight, he realizes the battlefield isn't always a place, it's a choice. To fight for others when you could stay silent. To act when it's easier not to. And for the first time since Rachel's death, Ethan Cross feels like he's finally done something that matters again. 1 year later, the world feels different, quieter, steadier. In a small community center on the outskirts of Redwood County, laughter and murmured conversation fill the air. Folding chairs form a half circle round a CPR dummy on the floor. A handwritten banner above the whiteboard reads, Cross First Response Training. Because everyone should know how to save a life, Ethan stands at the front of the room. His sleeves are rolled up, revealing the faint scars on his forearms, reminders of a life he no longer runs from. Around him sit 20 civilians, teachers, truck drivers, nurses, parents, all eager to learn. Maria, now 13, sits proudly in the back row, pencil in hand, taking notes like she's part of the class. Her hair is pulled back into a ponytail, her eyes sharp and full of quiet pride. Ethan kneels beside the CPR dummy. Most people freeze in emergencies, he says, his voice calm and steady. It's normal. Fear does that. But if you know what to do, your training takes over. You move before panic gets a chance to stop you. A young woman in the front raises her hand. What if we make a mistake? Ethan smiles, warm and knowing. Then you make one. But doing something, anything, is better than standing there. I've made plenty of mistakes, he says, his eyes softening. People still lived. The class chuckles, but the lesson lands deep. Every word he speaks carries the weight of experience, the kind that can't be learned from books. After class, Ethan stacks chairs while Maria collects handouts. The evening sun pours through the windows, coating everything in gold. You were amazing, Dad, she says, grinning. He glances at her. You're biased. Maybe, she teases. But they listened to you like you were a superhero. Ethan smirks. Superheroes wear capes. I just wear coffee stains. As they pack up, the door opens. Dana Lee steps in, not in uniform this time, just jeans, a leather jacket, and that familiar confident smile. Well, she says, leaning against the doorframe, the famous Ethan Cross finally decided to teach civilians instead of rescuing cops. Ethan looks up, surprised. Detective Lee, you clean up nice. Detective, huh? Someone's been keeping tabs. He shrugs, word travels. Dana walks closer, her limp almost gone. I got promoted a few months ago. Detective Bureau. Couldn't have done it without you. Ethan chuckles softly. You did all the bleeding. I just carried you. Yeah, well, she says, grinning. I'm a good learner. They walk outside together as Maria locks the classroom door behind them. The parking lot glows with sunset light, the sky streaked with orange and pink. Dana pulls a folder from her bag and holds it out. I thought you'd want to see this, she says quietly. We closed your wife's case. Ethan freezes, staring at her. DNA evidence came through, Dana continues. 3 arrests, all connected to the cartel. For a moment, he doesn't move. Then he opens the folder. Inside are 3 mugshots, hard faces, lifeless eyes. The same men who destroyed his world 5 years ago. He stares at them in silence. No anger, no triumph. Just a hollow sense of peace. "Thank you," he says finally. Dana nods. "It doesn't bring her back." "No," Ethan says softly. "But it means she didn't die for nothing." They stand quietly, the hum of crickets filling the air. After a long moment, Dana breaks the silence. "You ever think about coming back full-time? Consulting with the department again?" He shakes his head. "This is where I belong. Teaching regular people how to save lives before help arrives. It's quieter. Safer, you mean?" He smirks. "That too." Maria runs over and waves at Dana. "Hey, Detective Lee." Dana crouches down slightly. "Hey, kiddo. Your dad teaching you all the good stuff?" "Some of it," Maria says proudly. "He won't teach me the really cool stuff until I'm older." Ethan laughs and ruffles her hair. "That's because the cool stuff is also the scary stuff." Dana smiles, watching the way Ethan looks at his daughter with the kind of love that only comes from loss and survival. "You know what I've realized," she says. "You never really stop being a soldier. You just change your mission." Ethan considers that for a moment. The sun dips lower, shadows stretching across the asphalt. "Maybe," he says, "or maybe I finally figured out what I was fighting for all along." "And what's that?" He looks at her, his eyes soft but certain. "Not glory, not revenge, just making sure good people get to go home to their families." Dana's voice catches a little. "That's a mission worth keeping." "Yeah," he says, "one I can live with." They share a quiet smile before Dana steps closer and hugs him briefly. "The world needs more people like you, Ethan." He shakes his head. "The world needs more people like everyone. We all have something to give." Dana nods still. "You gave me my life back." She turns to leave, her car keys jingling softly. "Take care of yourself, soldier." Ethan watches her go, the taillights fading into the twilight. Maria climbs into the passenger seat of his truck, still humming one of her favorite songs. Ethan gets in beside her, starts the engine. On the rearview mirror, his black bracelet dangles, swaying gently. The words catch the light, "Never leave a fallen." He doesn't wear it anymore. He doesn't need to, because he finally understands what it means. It's not just about saving lives in battle, it's about never turning away from those who need you, no matter where or when. He glances at Maria, singing off-key to the radio, and smiles. "Seat belt, kiddo." She clicks it into place. "Yes, sir." Ethan chuckles. "Don't sir me. I'm retired." They drive home as the last light of day fades behind them. The world feels wide open again. For years, Ethan thought courage meant running toward gunfire. Now, he knows it's something quieter. It's getting up every morning after losing everything and still choosing to help someone else. As the truck rolls down the empty road, the sky turns deep purple. Maria yawns, leaning her head on the window. Ethan reaches over and turns down the radio. "Dad," she murmurs sleepily. "Yeah, do you miss Mom?" He looks out at the horizon. "Every day." "Do you think she'd be proud of you?" Ethan smiles faintly. "I hope so, but I think she'd be more proud of us." Maria's breathing slows as she drifts off. Ethan keeps driving, the rhythm of the road steady beneath the tires. The bracelet swings from the mirror like a promise kept. Never leave a fallen. Not a motto anymore. A way of life. Ethan Cross, former soldier, widower, father. Teacher drives toward home, with peace finally sitting quietly beside him. He's not leaving anyone behind anymore. Not ever again. 6 months later, the small first aid classroom has become something much bigger. The sign outside now reads Cross Response Institute, and every session is booked weeks in advance. Word has spread through Redwood County. Ethan Cross doesn't just teach first aid. He teaches people how to keep others alive when seconds count. Inside, he moves through a room filled with trainees, teachers, delivery drivers, even off-duty cops. They hang on to every word he says. Panic is contagious, he tells them, adjusting a student's grip on a tourniquet. So is calm. If you stay grounded, everyone else will follow your lead. That's the real secret. The group practices CPR, wound care, and triage. Each time someone hesitates, Ethan steps in not with judgment, but quiet encouragement. "You're doing fine," he says. Real courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting anyway. At the back of the room, Maria films snippets on her phone for the center's new website. "Smile, Dad," she says. "You're trending." Ethan laughs, shaking his head. "If saving lives becomes a trend, I'm fine with that." After class, the last student leaves, and Ethan wipes the board clean. The light outside is fading when Dana steps through the door. She's in plain clothes again, though the badge at her belt still gleams. There's something different about her tonight, tension around her eyes, a weight in her shoulders. "Evening, Detective," Ethan greets, tossing a rag onto the desk. "You here for a refresher course?" "Wish I were," she says quietly. "We need to talk." Ethan frowns, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "It's the cartel," Dana says. "We thought we finished them after the warehouse raid, but it's bigger than we realized. Different branches, new leadership. We've been tracking one of their lieutenants, Cortez's brother. He's building something again, and he knows about you." Ethan goes still. "About me? Your name came up in an intercepted message," she says, pulling a folder from her bag. "They know you trained our officers. They're calling you the medic who cost them everything." Ethan leans back against the desk, eyes darkening. "Let me guess they want payback." Dana nods. "We don't know how soon, but it's coming." He's quiet for a long moment, thinking of Maria. "You put security on my house?" "Already done," she says. "Unmarked patrol every night." "But Ethan." She hesitates. "If they come for you, they won't stop at your home. They'll use you to send a message." Ethan exhales slowly. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," Dana says. "But you stood up to them, and that makes you a threat." He walks to the window, staring at the twilight sky. "You said you had new leadership." "Who?" "Name's Diego Mendez," Dana says grimly. "Ex-military, dishonorably discharged for smuggling arms. Took over the Redwood operation after his cousin was arrested. He's smart, ruthless, and he knows how to move in silence." Ethan closes his eyes. "And he's coming here." "Most likely," she admits. "But we'll stop him before that happens." He turns, his tone firm. "No, you won't stop him by reacting. You'll stop him by outhinking him." Dana studies him for a beat. "You're coming back, aren't you?" "I'm not joining the department," he says, "but I'll help you plan. I've seen this kind of man before. He won't come through the front door. He'll strike when no one's looking, when it hurts most." "Your daughter," Dana says quietly. "Exactly." For the first time, Ethan feels the old soldier's edge return, not anger, but precision. The part of him that calculates every possibility, every escape route. That night, after Maria falls asleep, Ethan sits in the dim glow of his kitchen. The rain taps lightly against the windows, just like that night years ago. He studies the black bracelet on his wrist, running his thumb over the worn letters. "Never leave a Fallen." He thinks about Rachel, about the promise he made after losing her to stay out of the fight. But maybe staying out was never the promise he was meant to keep. Maybe it was this one, to protect. Always. The next morning, Ethan stands in the police precinct strategy room beside Captain Holt and Dana. The digital map of Redwood County glows on the wall, covered with red dots marking recent cartel activity. Mendez is moving weapons through rural drop points, Dana explains. But he's too careful. No direct shipments, no paper trail. Ethan steps closer, tracing the lines on the screen. "He's using decoys," he says. "He's not moving guns. He's moving parts, smaller pieces hidden in legitimate cargo. By the time you realize what you've intercepted, it's already reassembled somewhere else." Holt nods grimly. "Makes sense. We seized fertilizer shipments last month, nothing illegal on paper, but too many in a row." Ethan circles an area near the old highway. That's where he'll strike next. Industrial access, no security, 2 exit routes. He'll test your response time. Holt looks at him. "You sure?" "Positive. He's not running from you. He's watching you." Dana exhales. "So what do we do?" Ethan's voice is steady. "We set the trap before he does." The room goes quiet. 3 nights later, the trap is set. A decoy shipment of weapons is staged at the exact spot Ethan predicted. SWAT and plainclothes officers are positioned in silence, rain dripping from their gear. Ethan sits in the command van again, watching the monitors. Holt stands beside him. You ever get used to this part? Holt asks. Ethan shakes his head. No one should. At 2:17 a.m., headlights appear at the edge of the camera feed. A van rolls in, lights off, stopping near the decoy truck. 3 men step out, scanning the area. One of them wears a hood, but even through the grainy lens, Ethan recognizes the posture, the cold confidence of someone who's been in combat. Target confirmed, Dana whispers through the radio. That's Mendez. Ethan studies the screen. Wait, he says suddenly. Where's the 4th man? There's always a lookout. Holt freezes. What do you mean? Ethan's voice drops. He's not watching the road. He's watching the houses nearby. Then it hits him. Maria. He grabs the radio. Dana. They're not here for the shipment, they're here for me. Pull back now. Static answers. The radio hisses, then cuts off. Radio jammed, Holt says grimly. Ethan doesn't hesitate. He grabs his keys. I'm going home. Holt grabs his arm. You can't just, I'm not asking for permission. He storms out into the rain, jumps into his truck, and floors it through the dark streets. Lightning flashes across the sky. His mind races. Every second counts. When he reaches his street, his stomach drops. The porch light is on. The front door open. Ethan slams on the brakes and runs inside, heart pounding. The house is quiet to quiet. The smell of rain and gun oil fills the air. Maria. He shouts, no answer. He moves room to room, sweeping corners, his body remembering drills he swore he'd never repeat. Then he hears it, a faint sob. Closet. He throws the door open. Maria clings to him, eyes wide with terror. Dad, they were here. 2 men. They said your name. Ethan pulls her close, checking her over. You're okay. You're safe. Her voice shakes. They left when they heard sirens. Outside, the sound of approaching police cars grows louder. Ethan closes his eyes, relief mixing with fury. The fight he'd tried to walk away from has found him again. And this time, it's personal. The flashing red and blue lights painted the wet street in streaks of color. Maria sat wrapped in a blanket in the back of an ambulance, shaking but unharmed. Ethan stood nearby, soaked to the bone, jaw tight as he spoke to Captain Holt and Dana. They were here for me, he said, his voice low but certain. They didn't care about the raid or your trap. This was personal. Dana's eyes darkened. They knew where you live. How? Same way everyone finds everyone, Ethan muttered. Money and fear. Holt crossed his arms. We'll move your daughter into protective custody until this blows over. No, Ethan said immediately. She's staying with me. Ethan, that's not negotiable, Holt countered. If they come again, then they'll find a soldier waiting, Ethan snapped, the edge in his voice sharper than Holt had ever heard. For a moment, no one spoke. The rain fell heavier, masking the quiet rage simmering under Ethan's calm. Dana stepped forward gently. Ethan, this isn't a war zone. Let us help. He looked at her, eyes full of exhaustion. It's always a war zone, Dana. You just don't see it until it's on your doorstep. Holt sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. At least let one of our units patrol the block 24/7. Ethan finally nodded. Fine, but I'm not waiting around for them to try again. That night, after Maria finally fell asleep in her room, Ethan sat alone in the dark living room. On the table lay his old duffel bag. Inside, wrapped in cloth, were the remnants of a past life, a tactical vest, a few field tools, and a pistol engraved with his unit insignia. He hadn't touched it in years. He stared at it for a long time before slowly unwrapping the weapon. The metal felt cold, unfamiliar, yet comfortingly steady. He didn't want to be that man again, but the world wasn't giving him a choice. When he met Dana the next morning, his tone was all business. We find Mendez before he finds anyone else. She nodded grimly, agreed. We tracked his van from the decoy site. It was stolen, but we pulled partial prints off the steering wheel. He's using abandoned military storage depots along the old county line. Ethan studied the map she placed on the hood of her car. He's not hiding. He's setting up a base. These locations he's triangulating something. Probably a shipment or a strike zone. Dana glanced at him. You've done this before. He gave a hollow smile. Too many times. They drove for hours. scanning back roads and service trails until they reached a long-forgotten warehouse. Surrounded by trees, bullet holes scarred the metal siding, and the air smelled faintly of diesel. Ethan crouched low, peering through a crack in the door. "Thermal cams would pick us up if we rush in," he whispered. "We go quiet. You cover me." Dana hesitated. "Ethan, you said you wouldn't go back into the field." He looked at her steadily. "That was before they came to my house." She nodded once. No argument left. They moved silently through the side entrance, flashlights off, weapons drawn. Inside, the darkness felt thick, heavy with the ghosts of old violence. Crates lined the walls and marked, "Military issue." "Deceased these last year," Dana whispered. "How the hell did they get here?" Ethan's light caught something glinting in the far corner, a tripwire. "Careful. They booby-trapped it." Dana froze mid-step. "You're kidding." He crouched and clipped the wire carefully. "They know how to make noise if anyone comes snooping." Voices echoed faintly deeper inside. Spanish, low and tense. Ethan motioned for silence. They crept closer until they reached a catwalk overlooking the center of the warehouse. Below, a group of men stood around a table covered in blueprints and weapons parts. At the head of the table stood a tall, lean man with short-cropped hair and cold eyes. Diego Mendez. Ethan studied him for a moment. The man moved like a soldier, precise, confident. But there was something else there too, the arrogance of someone who believed he couldn't be touched. Mendez spoke sharply to one of his men. "El Medico, El Cuauhta La Policia, and Quintralo, Quiro su cabeza." Dana glanced at Ethan. "He's talking about you." Ethan whispered, "Yeah, I caught that." They needed proof before calling for backup. Dana pulled out her phone and started recording. But as she zoomed in, her sleeve brushed a loose bolt on the railing. It clinked, echoing through the metal structure like a gunshot. The men below froze. Mendez looked up. Their eyes met. "Arriba!" he shouted. Gunfire erupted. Ethan grabbed Dana and dove behind a support beam as bullets ripped through the catwalk. "Move!" he barked. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling sparks and splintering metal. Dana fired back, covering their retreat. "We're pinned." Ethan scanned the rafters. Stairs left. They bolted down the steps, weaving between crates. Bullets shredded the air around them. A grenade clattered across the floor. Ethan didn't think. He grabbed Dana and threw her behind a pile of sandbags. As the blast tore through the warehouse, the shockwave knocked the breath out of them. Dust and smoke filled the air. Somewhere in the chaos, Ethan heard Mendez shouting orders. "They're cutting us off," Dana coughed. Ethan pointed to the side wall. "We blow that lock and go through the back." Dana handed him her sidearm. He fired 3 rounds into the lock and kicked the door open. They stumbled outside into the night, lungs burning. Behind them, engines roared. Headlights swept across the trees. "Go!" Ethan yelled, pushing Dana toward the car. They dove in just as bullets slammed into the rear fender. Tires screeched. The car fishtailed before catching traction on the slick road. "Tell me you got the footage," Ethan gasped. Dana held up her phone, cracked but still recording. Every word. He exhaled hard. "Good. Then we can finally prove who's behind this." As they sped through the forest, Dana glanced over. "You okay?" Ethan's eyes stayed on the road. "No, but I know what comes next." She frowned. "What's that?" "We end this." By the time dawn broke, they were back at the precinct. Holt listened in silence as they played the recording. Mendez's face filled the screen, his words damning and clear. Holt nodded slowly. "That's enough to get federal warrants. We can take his entire network down." Ethan leaned forward. "He won't run. Men like him don't run. He'll hit back first." Holt studied him carefully. "Then what do you suggest?" Ethan looked between Holt and Dana. "You want to stop Mendez? You have to fight him on his terms. No waiting, no reacting. You bring the storm to his doorstep." Holt hesitated. "You sound like a man planning a war." Ethan met his gaze. "I'm planning to finish one." The next 48 hours were a blur of planning, tension, and controlled chaos. The precinct buzzed like a hive, phones ringing, radios crackling, officers moving with purpose. Every screen in the operations room showed satellite images, intercepted messages, or blueprints of Mendez's suspected compound. Ethan stood near the front with Captain Holt and Dana, eyes scanning every detail. He didn't wear a uniform, but his presence commanded attention. Holt trusted him now not just as a consultant, but as someone who'd been through the fire and come back alive. "The compound's a converted lumber yard," Holt said, pointing at the display. "High fences, armed guards, limited exits. If we go in loud, we risk hostages or worse." Ethan shook his head. "Mendez doesn't take hostages. He takes trophies. We go in fast, controlled, and hit his nerve center before he knows what's happening." Dana folded her arms. "What about Maria?" "She's with my neighbor," Ethan said quietly. "Holt's people are watching the house around the clock." Dana gave him a look that was half admiration, half worry. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure of one thing," he said. "If we don't end this now, he'll never stop coming." The room went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Holt finally gave a sharp nod. "All right. Operation goes down at 020 hours. Mendez thinks he's hunting us. Tonight, he learns what it's like to be hunted." At 1:47 a.m., a convoy of unmarked vehicles crept along a dirt road outside the city. Rain misted over the windshield as Ethan sat in the lead van beside Holt. Dana's voice came over the radio, "Teams in position. All units standing by." "Copy," Holt replied. He looked at Ethan. "You good?" Ethan's expression was calm, but his eyes carried the stillness of someone who'd accepted every possible outcome. Never been better. When they reached visual range of the compound, the headlights cut off. The rest of the way was darkness and breath. Ethan opened the rear door, stepped into the mud, and scanned the yard through night vision binoculars. For guards patrolling the east side, he murmured. 2 on the roof. Motion sensors near the main gate. Standard pattern. To standard, Dana's voice replied through his earpiece. "Feels like bait." "It is," Ethan said. "Mendez wants you to think he's sloppy, but he's funneling you to the front. We hit from the flank." Holt gave the signal. Team 1 moved through the trees like shadows. Ethan and Dana led Team 2 round the perimeter, crouching behind an old forklift. The faint hum of a generator vibrated in the air. Ethan pointed toward a rusted side door. "There, that's your entry." "Looks locked," Dana whispered. "Not for long." He pulled out a small pry tool from his belt. A quiet click, and the latch gave way. They slipped inside. The smell of oil and dust hung heavy. Machinery parts were stacked everywhere, crates filled with unmarked rifles, ammo, and grenades. Ethan's flashlight swept over the scene. "This isn't storage," he muttered. "It's manufacturing." Dana's eyes widened. "He's building weapons." "Not just weapons," Ethan said grimly. "Improvised explosives. This is a bomb factory." Suddenly, footsteps echoed above them, heavy, deliberate. Voices in Spanish shouted orders. "They know we're here," Dana hissed. "Then we move now." Ethan clicked his radio. "Holt, Mendez is inside. He's armed, and he's sitting on a pile of explosives. Evacuate your perimeter teams. 1 stray bullet, and this whole place goes up." "Copy that," Holt's voice replied, tight with urgency. "You and Lee get out now." But Ethan didn't move. He knew Holt's men wouldn't make it out in time if Mendez triggered the detonator. Dana noticed the change in his eyes. "Ethan, what are you doing?" "Buying you time." "Don't you dare." He cut her off. "Go, that's an order." "Last I checked," she snapped, "you don't outrank me." He almost smiled. "You never listened anyway." The door burst open. Gunfire exploded through the room. Ethan shoved Dana behind a steel beam and returned fire. Sparks flew as bullets ripped through metal. Mendez's men poured in like a wave. Ethan moved with trained precision, short bursts, efficient cover, no wasted motion. He shot out the overhead light, plunging the room into darkness. The attackers hesitated just long enough for him to take down. "Ethan, there's too many," Dana shouted. "Then we even the odds," he said, pulling a flashbang from his belt. He tossed it toward the open door. The explosion of white light and sound disoriented the gunmen. Ethan grabbed Dana's arm. "Move." They bolted down a narrow corridor, gunfire echoing behind them. At the end of the hall, a metal staircase led upward. They climbed fast, emerging onto a catwalk overlooking the main floor. And there he was, Diego Mendez, standing calmly below, holding a detonator in one hand, pistol in the other. His cold smile reflected the dim light. "Sigor Cross," Mendes called out. "The famous medic. You save lives. I take them." "Balance, no." Ethan's voice echoed down from the catwalk. "You're not getting out of here alive, Mendes. Drop the detonator." Mendes laughed, lifting it higher. It's not just for me. You take one more step, and your whole team dies." "Then so do you," Ethan said evenly. "You think I haven't been in rooms like this before?" Mendes's expression faltered. "You wouldn't risk it." "Try me." For a tense moment, neither man moved. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the roof like a countdown. Then Dana whispered, "He's stalling." Ethan's mind raced. Mendes's thumb hovered over the trigger, but his eyes flicked upward to a small skylight above the catwalk. "Sniper," Ethan realized aloud. Dana dropped instantly. The shot cracked a split second later, shattering the railing inches from Ethan's arm. Ethan fired back at the skylight. The sniper vanished from view. He turned toward Mendes, but the man was already running toward the back exit. "Go," Ethan shouted. They chased him through the maze of crates and corridors until they burst out into the open yard. Mendes sprinted toward a black SUV, rain whipping around him. Ethan raised his pistol. "Don't." But Mendes turned and fired. Ethan dove behind a forklift, returning fire. The last bullet hit Mendes square in the chest. He fell backward into the mud, the detonator skidding from his hand. Dana rushed over, gun still raised. Mendes coughed, blood pooling beneath him. His lips twisted into a smirk. "You think this stops anything?" Ethan knelt beside him, picking up the detonator. "No," he said quietly, "but it stops you." Mendes's body went still. The rain washed the blood away into the dirt. Sirens wailed in the distance as Holt's convoy arrived. Officers spread out, securing the perimeter. Holt approached, his expression unreadable. "It's over," he said finally. Ethan looked at the detonator in his hand. "Yeah," he murmured. "For now." Dana stood beside him, soaked and exhausted. "You just saved half the city, you know." Ethan glanced at her, his voice steady. "I didn't do it for the city." She met his gaze. "I know." They watched as officers loaded the surviving gunmen into vans, the compound burning behind them. The storm finally began to ease, the rain softening to a drizzle. Holt walked up and extended his hand. "You did good, son." Ethan shook it. "I just finished what my wife started." Holt nodded solemnly. "Then she'd be proud." Ethan didn't answer. He just looked up at the sky, the smoke rising into the rain, and felt the weight of years finally lift off his shoulders. Later that night, Ethan stood outside his home. The porch light glowed warm against the darkness. Inside, Maria was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, safe. Dana pulled up in her car and joined him on the porch. "You okay?" she asked. He exhaled slowly. "Yeah, for the first time in a long time." She smiled softly. "You know, for a guy who swore he'd never go back into the field, you sure picked one hell of a comeback." Ethan chuckled quietly. "Guess old habits die hard. Or maybe the right ones never do," she said. They stood there in silence, the night calm and clean after the storm. Morning came slow and quiet, the kind of peace that only follows a long storm. The streets of Redwood County were still slick with rain, sunlight glinting on puddles. The city had finally exhaled. The news was everywhere. Cartel leader killed in police operation. For most people, it was just another headline. But for Ethan Cross, it meant something far deeper. He stood in his backyard, sipping coffee as Maria chased their dog across the grass. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was waiting for something bad to happen. The danger had passed. The noise had faded. All that remained was quiet. Dana arrived just before noon, her car crunching over the gravel driveway. She was out of uniform again, jeans and a leather jacket. The same casual strength that had carried her through every storm. "You look like a man who slept for once," she said with a grin. Ethan chuckled. 3 whole hours. That's a new record. Maria ran up and hugged Dana. "Hi, Detective Lee." "Hey, kiddo. You keeping your dad out of trouble?" "Trying to," Maria said with mock seriousness. "But he's sneaky." Dana laughed, ruffling her hair. "Yeah, I've noticed." She turned to Ethan. "Captain Holt's calling at the end of a long chapter. Mendez's operation is finished. Federal task forces are taking over cleanup. You did it. Ethan shook his head. We did it. Nobody does something like that alone. Dana smiled softly. Still, Holt wanted me to give you this. She handed him a small wooden plaque. In the center, under the department's insignia, was an engraved line, "For courage beyond duty, Ethan Cross." He stared at it quietly, running his fingers along the edge. You know I'm not much for awards. Yeah, Dana said, her eyes warm. But this one's for Maria to see, so she knows who her father really is. Maria looked up at him proudly. I already know who he is, she said simply. Ethan smiled, pulling her close. That's all that matters. Weeks passed, and life began to find its rhythm again. The Cross Response Institute expanded, now hosting classes twice a week. Ethan taught CPR and trauma care to anyone willing to learn, parents, store owners, even police recruits who wanted extra training. Every class started the same way. Ethan would point to a large quote painted on the wall behind him, "Courage doesn't retire." Sometimes he caught himself thinking of Rachel when he said it. She would have laughed and told him he'd always been too stubborn to quit. Dana often dropped by, helping with workshops when her detective work allowed. She'd tease him about his old military habits, his precise timing, his no-nonsense tone, but beneath the humor was deep respect. They didn't talk much about that night in the warehouse. They didn't need to. One afternoon, Maria wandered into the classroom while he was demonstrating CPR on a mannequin. "Dad," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Can I try?" The student smiled as Ethan nodded and stepped aside. Maria knelt beside the dummy, placed her small hands in the center of the chest, and began compressions, counting out loud the way she'd heard him do hundreds of times. "Good," Ethan said softly. "Now tilt the head back, check for breathing, and keep calm." Maria did exactly that. When she finished, the class clapped quietly. Ethan's chest tightened with pride. After everyone left, Maria stayed behind, helping him clean up. "Dad," she asked after a moment. "Yeah, when Mom died. Did it hurt this much for you to breathe?" Ethan stopped mid-motion. The question landed softly, but it carried the weight of everything they'd both been through. He took a long breath before answering. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Every single day." Maria looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "But you still kept going." He knelt down to meet her gaze. "Because you gave me a reason to. You're my mission now." She wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the ache of loss, just gratitude. Months later, spring painted the town in soft greens and golds. The police department hosted a community ceremony, honoring those who helped dismantle the cartel's network. There were medals, speeches, and applause, but Ethan stood in the back, hands in his pockets, quietly observing. When Dana took the stage, she spotted him and gave a small nod before speaking. "There are people who wear the badge," she said, her voice strong and clear. "And there are people who remind us why we wear it." Ethan Cross did that. He taught us that bravery isn't just charging into danger, it's doing what's right, even when no one's watching. The crowd applauded. Ethan felt a quiet warmth spread through him. Holt joined him a moment later, standing shoulder to shoulder. "You should be up there, you know." Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm good right here." Holt looked at him for a long time, then nodded. "You've done enough for 10 lifetimes, son. Whatever peace you're chasing, I hope you find it." "I already did," Ethan said, watching Maria laugh with other kids in the crowd. Right there. That evening, after the ceremony, Ethan and Dana walked through the park as the sun dipped low. Birds scattered across the pink sky, and the air smelled of rain and grass. Dana stopped by the lake's edge. "You ever think about going back? Military, consulting, something bigger?" He shook his head with a small smile. "No, I think I finally found my place." "Teaching?" she asked. "Living," he said simply. "That's harder than any mission I ever had." She smiled softly. "You know, you could have walked away that night on the highway. Most people would have." Ethan looked out over the water. "Yeah, but I stopped. Because deep down, I knew I couldn't leave someone behind again." Dana's voice softened. "And you never have." They stood there in silence, the lake glimmering like glass beneath the fading light. Then Dana turned toward him, her expression warm. "The world's better with people like you in it, Ethan." He looked at her, half smiling. The world's better because people like you still believe it can be. She chuckled. Always have to have the last word, huh? Old habit, he said. They laughed quietly together, and in that laughter was everything they'd survived: grief, fear, redemption. Later that night, back home, Ethan tucked Maria into bed. She was older now, stronger, carrying pieces of both her parents, the calm of her mother, the stubborn heart of her father. As she drifted off to sleep, Ethan turned off the lamp and stood for a moment in the doorway. On the wall above her bed hung a framed photo, Rachel in uniform, smiling, sunlight on her face. "Wish you could see her now," he whispered. Downstairs, he sat at the table, looking out through the open window. The night was quiet, stars glinting in the dark sky. On the mantel above him hung his old black bracelet, the letters still faint but clear. "Never leave a Falun." He no longer wore it, not because he'd forgotten its meaning, but because he no longer needed a reminder. Every life he touched, every person he taught, every moment he chose compassion over silence. That was the bracelet now. He finished his coffee, leaned back in his chair, and let the night settle around him. The war inside him was over. Ethan Cross, a soldier who became a teacher, a father who refused to give up, a man who stopped at an accident and changed everything. Courage hadn't left him. It had simply found a new home. He glanced at the sky one last time and whispered, almost to himself, never again. Not leaving anyone behind. Not ever. And with that quiet promise, Ethan turned out the light, the house peaceful and still, as the world outside carried on alive, because one man, one ordinary man, refused to keep driving. Courage doesn't retire.